Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book about England. We're going to look at all the pictures and even read all the little boxes inside. So let's just dive right in. Look at the beefeater there standing guard. Buckingham Palace, I bet. Wasn't that lovely? Beautiful waterway there full of sailboats. And the countryside back there. England's one of the few foreign countries that I've been to. And whenever I just picture England and I close my eyes and think about it, the first thing that comes to mind is honestly these patchwork countryside farm fields and plains and the little sheep running around and stuff like that. Here's a political map of England, and here is the goddess Britannia that Britain is named after. Yeah, this is what I think of, very rural, big old country homes, ancient old buildings, and lots of sheepies. Here's a map of the counties of England and also the various regions of England. Isn't that beautiful? That's the Isle of Wight. Big rocky coastline there on the island. Pretty wildflowers too. Here's a physical map of England. You can see mostly flat. It gets more mountainous in the north, where it'll look like this. Isn't that beautiful? And here are the white cliffs of Dover, made out of chalk. Just fun. When I was there, you could pick up chunks of it and write on walls and things because it's chalk. A beautiful beach here. That's a very lovely beach. Let's read this first little box here. It says, "Raise the gates." The River Thames runs through London. The river is affected by the tides, so when seas are high and stormy, water can roar down the river, causing great damage to the area. To protect the city, a barrier was built across the river in the 1980s. When high seas and high tides are predicted, floodgates that look like metal sails are raised to keep the river from overflowing its banks. That's pretty neat. Another box. These kids found a huge fossil. Wow. Jurassic Coast. In southern England is a 95-mile stretch of land called the Jurassic Coast. The rocks that make up the seaside cliffs in this area are exposed. These rocks date back to the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, the time when dinosaurs dominated the land. Visitors to the coast can see dinosaur footprints and ancient fossilized trees. The geologic history visible along the Jurassic Coast spans 185 million years, ending with the disappearance of dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Yeah, I visited one of these, fossil beaches, but didn't get to look for any fossils because there are so many people. It was so packed full of people just walking around, looking down at the ground very slowly, deliberately, so too many people out fossil hunting. Is this not beautiful? The Uffington White Horse, where the ancients carved into the land to expose the chalk underneath and made horse. Beautiful. This is in Dartmoor. The big rocks here. It's so beautiful and enjoying the beach. It's very sweet. A very, very rainy day. Is a very rainy place. Let's read about some of the big cities. London, England's capital city, is also its largest city with a population of more than 8 million people. The West Midlands is the second most populated area after London, and at its heart is the city of Birmingham. In 2010, Birmingham was home to more than 1 million people. Birmingham began as a settlement in the 6th or 7th century CE. By medieval times, it was a market town. The city grew in importance as manufacturing grew, first in small family workshops and later in big factories. Today, Birmingham is the center of England's high-tech and automotive industries. Sorry if you see lots of wobbling. My Tourette's is really acting up tonight. I apologize. Liverpool is the third largest city in England, with a population of around 816,200 people. Much of the city's waterfront, which you can see here, has been designated a World Heritage Site by the United Nations because of its historic ports on the Mersey estuary. Actually, I'm pretty sure that it was delisted recently because they haven't been preserving it properly. In the 19th century, it was the busiest port in the world. Ships moved in and out of the port, weighed down with cargo. Many Irish people left for America from Liverpool. Today, Liverpool is an important cultural and educational center. The next largest cities, Leeds and Sheffield, are in the county of Yorkshire. Both are important industrial cities. For a long time, Leeds was an important wool processing city. In more recent years, the city has produced furniture, paper, and electrical equipment. It is also a transportation hub, with many railway lines passing through it. Sheffield, which you can see up here, has long been known for its steel products. It is located on 6 rivers, and it is said that the rivers powered the wheels that ground the steel that made Sheffield famous. Part of the city lies within the Peak District National Park, and the city is filled with gardens and woods. Sheffield has more trees per person than any other city in Europe. How interesting. The gorgeous coastline, and there is a hiking trail that goes along the entire southern coast of England, which sounds like an amazing hike. Look at these majestic deer. Wow, beautiful. Let's read about hippos in England. Hippopotamuses once lived on the land that is now England. That was about 125,000 years ago, when the planet was warmer, seas were higher, and Great Britain was attached to the rest of Europe. In 2004, the bones of hippopotamuses, much larger than modern-day ones, were found in Suffolk, near the North Sea. My Tourette's didn't like the word hippopotamuses. It still doesn't. That's funny. Look at this sweet baby fox. Oh my gosh, that is the cutest thing. Ah, so sweet. Some ponies here out in the countryside. Lovely. And here's an adorable hedgehog. Let's read about hedgerows and hedgehogs. Looking a bit like a pine cone on legs, the hedgehog is a small mammal that can roll up into a prickly ball to protect itself when startled. Hedgehogs often live in hedgerows. These are rows of shrubs and trees originally planted to mark the edges of farm fields. Many hedgerows were planted hundreds of years ago. They are home to various kinds of wildlife, especially birds. In recent years, a lot of hedgerows have been removed so that farm machinery can be used more efficiently on fields. I hope that doesn't hurt the little sweet hedgehogs. Ooh, Robin Hood's oak, the big Robin Hood tree. England has many ancient trees. One of the most famous is the major oak in Sherwood Forest in Nottinghamshire, where legend says Robin Hood and his merry men hid out. The tree is thought to be at least 800 years old. At ground level, the distance around the outside of the trunk is about 34 feet. Some branches are so huge and heavy they need support poles under them to keep them from breaking. You can see them right here. Keep the tree up. Preserving nature. England has set aside 10 areas as national parks. By creating national parks, the government hopes to help preserve the natural beauty of the land, help protect the animals that live there, and encourage the public to appreciate the land. England's national parks include Lake District National Park, which you can see right here, and Peak District National Park, which are near each other in the north. The Lake District Park features beautiful lakes that were gouged out by retreating glaciers long ago. Peak District Park features the rugged hills of the northern Pennine Mountains. I've learned how to say it now. Northumberland National Park, on the border with Scotland, is home to Hadrian's Wall, built by the ancient Romans. I got laughed at when I said Pennine Mountains in my Every Country in Europe video, so now I know. Thank you for correcting me. South Downs National Park, the country's youngest national park, began operating in 2011. It protects the white chalk that makes the downs, including the White Cliffs of Dover. A national trail 99 miles long runs through the park. Some places in England are designated Areas of Outstanding Natural Beauty, or AONBs, and Sites of Special Scientific Interest, or SSSIs. There are almost 40 AONBs in England. They range from the Cotswolds, which you can see up here, so quaint, a region of beautiful small villages, to Chichester Harbour, one of the natural sections of the south coast. An SSSI can be a nature reserve, a geological site, or a breeding ground for a species. England has hundreds of SSSIs. In Cheshire, for example, a wetland with rare mosses is designated as an SSSI. The largest SSSI in England is the Wash, an area of Norfolk and Lincolnshire that consists of a huge bay and estuary and the low-lying marshy ferns around it. I can apologize for the trembling and shaking. I've tried to correct it as much as possible. I've actually improved it, so this is the best I can do tonight with my Tourette's. I can't really control it. But anyway, there's a big ancient shield here. Isn't that beautiful? So shiny and lots of little embellishments. Ancient Stonehenge. On the Salisbury Plain, southwest of London, is a great circle of upright stones. Called Stonehenge, it is one of the world's greatest prehistoric sites. About 5,300 years ago, people created a huge earthen circle on the land. Later, stones were added. The large stones weigh about 50 tons each. No one knows for sure why Stonehenge was built. A line of stones follows the exact line of sunrise on June 21st, the summer solstice, the day of the year when the sun is up for the longest time. This precise arrangement of the stones makes some people think Stonehenge was an astronomical observatory. I agree, I think that too. The Roman conquest of Britain, you can see they were up here, and then up here, and then up here by 80 CE. Finding Rome in England. In Somerset County, about 100 miles west of London, are large natural hot springs where hot water bubbles up from beneath the ground. The Celtic people who lived in the area 2,000 years ago dedicated the hot springs to a goddess named Sulis. After the Romans invaded, they built a town on the site, which they called Aquae Sulis, meaning the waters of Sulis. The Romans built a temple and elaborate bathing complex on the site. After the Romans left England, the bathing complex fell into ruin. Centuries later, a new bathing complex was built in the town now called Bath. Some areas of old Roman baths have been excavated, and a museum holds columns, carvings, and other artifacts of the town's Roman past. More remnants of ancient Rome are still being discovered there. In 2012, a stash of more than 30,000 Roman coins were discovered not far from the Roman baths. That's neat. There's Queen Boudica leading her army of Celts against the Romans. And here's King Arthur, the legend of King Arthur. Sometime in the early years of the Saxon invasion, a leader called King Arthur helped defend the English lands. He became a hero to his people. That is about all that is known of the real King Arthur, but legends about him began to develop almost immediately. In the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth created most of the stories told about Arthur today. He wrote about the Round Table, the sword Excalibur, and Merlin the Magician. French writer Chrétien de Troyes expanded the story of King Arthur. He added Lancelot, as well as the idea that the Holy Grail, the cup Jesus is said to have drunk from shortly before he died, might be in England. Invaders and settlers, you can see the Danish coming from Danelaw. And then there's Wessex and the Normans there at the Battle of Hastings. And the Angles too. There they are. This is the Domesday Book. It's a recording made by William the Conqueror of every single building in England at the time in 1086. Here is King John very reluctantly signing the Magna Carta. He's like, sign your name there. And he's like, do I have to? Yes, King John. This guy's about to like lose it. He's like, yes, you have to. Let's read about the Black Death. The plague was one of the most horrific epidemics in human history. Known as the Black Death, it started in Asia and quickly spread across Europe. It reached England in 1348, and in 2 years it is estimated to have killed half of all the people who lived there. The disease was terrifying. It caused swelling that looked like large blisters. People would get high fevers and vomit blood. They would die within a few days of being infected. It looks like they're dumping bodies here in the pit. Yikes. Becoming the United Kingdom. Let's read the timeline here. So in 1485, Henry Tudor of Wales becomes Henry VII of England, uniting England and Wales. In 1541, Henry VIII, you can see here, forces the Irish to acknowledge him as their king. In 1603, Elizabeth I dies without children. Parliament brings King James Stuart of Scotland, a descendant of Henry VII, to England, making him James I. In 1707, the Acts of Union joined Scotland to England and Wales. In 1801, Great Britain and Ireland joined to form the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. And in 1921, under the Anglo-Irish Treaty, 2/3 of the island of Ireland becomes independent. The northern counties, called Northern Ireland, remain part of the United Kingdom. And thus we have the United Kingdom we know today. There's Oliver Cromwell looking very gallant there during the English Civil War. And here's the Great Fire of London. In 1666, the Great Fire of London swept through the city. The fire raged for 4 days, destroying more than 13,000 houses, along with nearly 90 churches and many government buildings. After the fire, the city was rebuilt with the same street plan, and buildings were reconstructed on the same sites. But rather than being made from wood, the buildings were made from brick and stone, which do not burn. Architect Christopher Wren made a permanent mark on the city by designing 51 new churches to replace those that had been destroyed. Here's some British in India. And here's a map of the British Empire as of 1919. You can see there in almost every continent. Were they still in? Can I see? Yep, you can see a little bit there. So yeah, every continent. Not to mention the Falkland Islands down there. This is the world's first iron structure. Isn't that interesting? Built between 1777 and 1779. It's beautiful. And this is a steam engine used to power very old-timey cars and machinery. And here's a textile factory in Manchester during the Industrial Revolution. And a choo-choo train going along the track there. Soldiers in the trenches during World War I. And the Blitz, the bombing during World War II in London. Here are some Jamaicans coming off a ship to come work in England. They look very smart. Very well dressed for just having a long Atlantic voyage. They look ready to come to dry land. Let's read about building for the Olympics. The Olympic Games have been held in London 3 times, 1908, 1948, and 2012. It is the only city to have hosted the Games so many times. When London was chosen as the site of the 2012 Summer Olympics, the British government used the opportunity to revitalize much of the East End of London, especially the section called Stratford. It built a new stadium and a village called Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. The village held more than 17,000 athletes and officials during the Olympics. There are plans to convert the village into housing for up to 5,000 families. That's awesome. And here is the Queen, who just recently passed. It's very, very sad. She was such a beloved figure in England and the United Kingdom and around the world. And here's her grandson, Kate, during their wedding. Let's read about it. On April 29th, 2011, Prince William married Catherine Middleton, who's called Kate, at Westminster Abbey in London. An estimated 2 billion people worldwide watched the event on television, including me, and hundreds of millions more watched it live on the internet. And here's the flag. Let's read this box. The flag of England is called St. George's Cross. It consists of a red cross on a white background. St. George is the patron saint of England. He was a Roman soldier from about 300 CE who was persecuted for becoming a Christian. Legend says that St. George slew a dragon, perhaps near the town of Glastonbury, although there's no evidence that he was ever in England or that dragons have ever existed. The Union Jack is the official flag of the United Kingdom. It is red, white, and blue with a red cross through the center, just like this. It is a combination of the national flags of England, Scotland, and Ireland. And there's Buckingham Palace. And here's Big Ben. Both bodies of Parliament meet in the Houses of Parliament in London. The wing that holds the House of Commons was destroyed during World War II, but it was rebuilt following the original plans. A tall clock tower rises from the Houses of Parliament. The clock is known as Big Ben and is one of the symbols of London. Female first. The first woman to serve in Parliament was Nancy Astor, an American who was born Nancy Langhorne. She was married to Waldorf Astor, an Englishman who was a member of Parliament, or an MP. When he entered the House of Lords, his wife ran for his seat in the House of Commons and won. She was an MP from 1919 to 1945. Here's David Cameron. He was most likely Prime Minister when this book came out. That kind of tells you how old this book is. And here's another Prime Minister. Let's read about the Iron Lady. No woman had ever been Prime Minister in the United Kingdom until Margaret Thatcher, who was still alive when this book came out, led the Conservative Party to power in 1979. Thatcher was the daughter of a grocer. She attended Oxford University, where she became active in conservative politics. She was first elected to Parliament in 1959 and quickly became known for her strong conservative beliefs. She argued in favor of lower taxes and supported capital punishment. As Education Secretary in the early 1970s, she supported cuts in spending. As Prime Minister, she continued these policies. She cut taxes, slashed spending on education and other programs, limited the power of trade unions, and sold government businesses such as the gas, water, and electric industries to private companies. Together, her policies became known as Thatcherism. Because of her uncompromising beliefs and tough personality, people called her the Iron Lady. And here's a little quaint polling station here at the local church. Let's read a closer look at London. London, England's capital and largest city, is one of the world's leading cities. It is a center of culture, finance, education, fashion, and more. London began as the Roman settlement of Londinium and gradually grew into a large city with an estimated population of 60,000. The city shrank for a time after the Romans left, but then began to flourish again, becoming a center for business and politics. For much of the 1800s, London was the largest city in the world. Today, London is a bustling, multicultural city where more than 300 different languages are spoken. More than 8 million people live within the city limits. About 14 million live in the city and its suburbs, making it the largest metropolitan area in the European Union. That's how old this book is. With so many people living in the area, traffic in central London became very congested. To help improve the situation, a fee system was put in place in 2003. Cars going into central London on weekdays must pay a fee that equals about $15 a day. Cameras mounted around the area record the license plate number of every car that enters. Computers then check whether the owner of that car has paid the fee. Since the fees were enacted, traffic going into central London has dropped by about 35%. London is a city of big parks as well as skyscrapers. Together, Hyde Park, which you can see over here, and Kensington Gardens splash a large swath of green across central London. The tallest building in London was completed in 2012. The Shard London Bridge, also known as the Shard, meaning a sharp piece of glass, which the building resembles, used to be called London Bridge Tower. It is 1,017 feet tall, making it the tallest building in England, and it was the tallest in the entire European Union when England was still a part of the European Union. The national anthem, which at the time was called God Save the Queen, now it is God Save the King, so why don't we read it as God Save the King? God Save the King is the national anthem of the United Kingdom. The song has existed for several hundred years, but no one knows who wrote it or when it was written. Fact for British people here, it uses the same tune as the American patriotic song God Bless America. I wonder how many non-Americans know that. God Save the King has several verses, but typically only the first verse is sung. Until recent years, it was sung at the end of all public gatherings. The word Queen's changed to King depending on who England's monarch is at the time. Yeah, it's not going to be called God Save the Queen for a long time. We don't know when it would be changed to Queen again. He's working hard on his tractor there. Very old-looking tractor. A resources map. We can see lots of pasture land and track farming. Lots and lots of farming. Let's look at these fancy wheels. Rolls-Royce has been making luxury cars in Manchester since 1904. Although Rolls-Royce is now owned by the German car company BMW, the cars are still built by hand in England. The new Ghost model costs about $250,000 US. The Phantom costs almost twice that much. A separate Rolls-Royce company headquartered in London is the world's second largest maker of airplane engines. The business of chocolate. Some Cadburys. Chocolate arrived in England from the West Indies about 1650. At first it was sold as a medicine, but then milk and sugar were added, and it became a hot chocolate drink. English chocolate has been an important product ever since. The first chocolate candy bar was made in Bristol in 1847. A couple of decades before that, in 1824, John Cadbury had opened a shop in Birmingham and sold chocolate drinks, coffee, and tea. In 1905, the Cadbury Company created the Dairy Milk Bar, a chocolate candy bar. More than 100 years later, it is still being sold. In 2010, Cadbury was bought by Kraft Foods, an American company. Money facts. The main unit of English money is the pound sterling, which uses this symbol. Each pound is divided into 100 pence. Paper money comes in volumes of 5, 10, 20, and 50 pounds. Coins have values of 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50 pence, as well as 1 and 2 pounds. All coins and bills have a profile of Queen Elizabeth II on the front. The back of each bill has an image of a significant figure from English history. For example, the 5-pound note depicts Elizabeth Fry, a prison reformer, and the 10-pound note shows naturalist Charles Darwin. Sorry for the shaking. All the coins except the 2-pound coin were redesigned in 2008. Matthew Dent, a young graphic designer, won a contest to create the new design. The back of each of the 6 redesigned coins shows part of the royal shield. Together, the 6 coins laid out in the correct arrangements form the entire shield. In 2012, $1 equaled 65p, and 1 pound equaled about $1.54. A new economic center. For hundreds of years, the Docklands was a thriving port where ships lined up to be loaded and unloaded. But in the 1960s, shipping companies began using huge cargo ships that required deep water ports. The Docklands was no longer useful, and it was abandoned. The docks sat quiet, and poverty among nearby residents was high. In the 1980s, the city began to redevelop the area, starting with Canary Wharf, where Britain's tallest building is located. The Docklands has turned into a major financial center. Many commuters from the suburbs work in the Docklands rather than in the center of London. Construction of the Docklands Light Railway made getting to work there even easier. An urban airport, London City Airport, was also built in the area. The University of East London was formed out of several small technical colleges, attracting thousands of students to the Docklands. East London has also become a center for technology and internet companies. It's an especially good place for startups, which are new companies hoping to make it big. There are plenty of young, technically minded people to fill the jobs. Google, the huge internet company, opened a big office there in 2012. Let's see. This is Warwick Castle. And here's the London Eye. A great way to see London is from the London Eye, the large Ferris wheel in Europe. It is located on the south bank of the River Thames across from the Houses of Parliament. It is one of the most popular tourist attractions in England. The wheel is 443 feet tall. Around the edge of the wheel are 32 gondolas, which are completely enclosed and air-conditioned. The gondolas are so large that visitors can walk around them while admiring the astounding view during the half-hour ride. I had a chance to go up in the London Eye, and once I got close, I panicked because I'm really not a heights person. Once I realized how slow it was going and realized I'd be up in the air really high for half an hour, I said, no, thank you. Let's play. Merlin Entertainments Group, headquartered in Poole, England, is the world's second largest amusement park company in the world after Disney. It has Legoland parks in the United States. It also owns the Madame Tussauds wax museums around the world, the London Eye Ferris wheel, and Britain's largest theme park, Alton Towers. It even owns Warwick Castle, a 1,000-year-old castle that was built on the orders of William the Conqueror. Warwick Castle is a neat place. I've been there, actually. It has amusements, just like you'd imagine. Not like full-on roller coasters, but there's fun things to do there. Capturing the wind. In 2010, the world's largest offshore wind farm, the Thanet offshore wind farm, began operation. More than 100 giant wind turbines are planted in the North Sea off Kent. As the turbines turn, they generate electricity. Underwater cables carry this electricity to land. Each turbine is 380 feet high. Though they are located 7 miles out to sea, they are so tall that they can be seen from shore. 12 other smaller wind farms are also located around the British coastline, And throughout the United Kingdom today, there are about 250 more operating wind farms. On the left. In England, people drive on the left side of the road, whereas in the United States, Canada, and most of Europe, people drive on the right side. Because driving on the left is unusual, some signs in England warn people which direction they need to look when crossing streets. Look left. Around the world, most of the countries that drive on the left are former British colonies. In England, people walking on sidewalks also stay to the left. It's a busy day in London. The quaint little houses there. Here's the Channel train coming through and riding on the underground. Thinking ahead. Crossrail is a new subway system being built underneath London. It is expected to be running by 2018. Let me know if it is running. I've never heard of it. It will have 37 stations along a 13-mile route. The Crossrail will weave between the tunnels of the old subway system and the basements of buildings. By the time it's ready, London will have an additional 1 million or more residents and will need the expanded transportation. Some school children here. This kid's uncomfortably close to the camera. She's like, back up. Old English. One of the oldest pieces of writing in England is Beowulf, a long epic poem about a hero who battles a monster called Grendel, but later dies from a wound inflicted by a dragon. It was written sometime between 600 and 900 CE in West Saxon, which is a dialect of Old English. There are many modern translations of the poem, and let's see, the first lines in one version is, "So the Spear Danes in days gone by, and the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns." I actually read Beowulf on my channel because it's one of my favorite classic pieces of literature. If I remember, I'll link it up on the thing, but no guarantees because I tend to forget that. There's a suite right here. This talks about how sweaters are called jumpers. I'm going to skip the language boxes. I'm talking on the phone, having a nice day. And a population map. You can see all the big population centers. And you can skip that too. I'm buying some sausages, it looks like, from the little market here. And a Pakistani family, or just friends, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a very large minority group. There's actor Ben Kingsley, who's half Indian, famous for being in the movie Gandhi. Is he half Indian, or? I always assumed he was half Indian. Anyway, I don't actually know. And then celebrating Chinese New Year. Oh, that's a pretty picture of this lovely choir singing here. Let's read about mythical creatures. The myths and tales from England are populated with such characters as elves, fairies, sprites, brownies, hobgoblins, imps, giants, and ghosts. These are the usually unseen creatures whose pranks and deeds explain the small mysteries of life, such as what was howling in the woods, why the milk spoiled so easily, what caused the river to flood and spoil a crop, why a baby died, why the knitting yarn got all tangled. Most of these creatures come from the Germanic tales that traveled to England with the Angles and Saxons. Today, these creatures inhabit entertaining folktales. Some medieval times, some pilgrims going to Canterbury, just like in the Canterbury Tales. The English Saint. Henry II appointed his friend Thomas Becket as Archbishop of Canterbury in 1162. Becket made decisions based on the idea of the church being superior to the king. This made Henry angry. The king wanted someone to get rid of Becket, not physically, and 4 of his knights murdered the archbishop in Canterbury Cathedral in 1170. Miracles were soon being attributed to Becket, and the Pope declared him a saint. Yeah, he didn't mean literally get rid of him, but some people took it that way. This is the Archbishop of Canterbury, 2003. And this is at Westminster Cathedral. Wow. The King James Bible. The most famous book ever produced in London is the King James Version of the Bible. It was originally published in 1611. 7 years before, King James I brought together scholars to translate the Bible into English. It became the main English translation for 400 years. Newer translations of the Bible are easier to understand, but many people still prefer the poetry of the King James Version. Some Hindu women here for a ceremony. Oh, they're celebrating a wedding. The Beatles. I love the Beatles, especially in this era. I don't know, I liked their classic little rock and roll era better than the hippie era, even though their hippie songs are beautiful. The Record Breaker. The Guinness Book of Records lists Paul McCartney, my favorite Beatle, the members of the Beatles, as the most successful musician and composer in popular music history. His song Yesterday, which he wrote for the Beatles in 1965, has been recorded by more than 2,200 musicians, making it the most recorded song in history. I did not know that. Elton John, we stand. Adele, we stand. Lots of great musicians. Beatrix Potter, we stand. J.K. Rowling, not so much. We're going to skip her part because we don't read about people like her on my channel. The classic Romeo and Juliet film. I love this version. It's so beautiful. Here's Ralph Fiennes. And Matt Smith playing Doctor Who. Or the Doctor, I should say. Simon Cowell. One of the more famous of Turner's paintings. It's really beautiful. Let's see, there's Anish Kapoor. And it says that they built this art for the Olympics. Anish Kapoor is kind of like a jerk in the art world. So we're going to skip talking about him too. He tried to trademark the color black. So anyway, there's Stephen Hawking, famous scientist. And let's read about Tim Berners-Lee, Web Man. London-born Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, the www, in website addresses. He was born in 1955. His parents were involved in the development of the first commercial computers in the 1950s, so he learned about them early. He was in his 20s when he experimented with sharing information using hypertext. That's the language that displays in immediately readable format what you see in the website, instead of needing it to be decoded. He says that he created the web by putting other people's work together to make something new. Thank you, Tim Berners-Lee. Some Man U fans here celebrating. Around the world, it says Ellen MacArthur is a sailor who was born in Derbyshire. Although Derbyshire is not near the sea, MacArthur fell in love with sailing. She grew up to become a record breaker. In 2005, she made the fastest journey around the world, sailing alone. She beat the previous record by more than a day. The Queen honored her achievement by making her a dame, the female equivalent of a knight. She is believed to be the youngest person ever to be honored in that way. She was only 29 at the time. That's pretty cool. Ooh, this kid is about to have a nice big kick on his football. Ooh, cheese. Let's read about cheese. Let's see. Many different kinds of cheeses are made in England. Most are sold only locally. The most famous English cheese is cheddar, created originally near Cheddar Gorge in Somerset. Others are Wensleydale from North Yorkshire, Stilton, a soft, strong blue cheese originally from Cambridgeshire, and Crumbly, Cheshire, England's oldest cheese, which has been made for hundreds of years. We don't need to read recipes for beans on toast. You don't even need a recipe for beans on toast. You put the toast in the toaster. You heat the beans, and then you pour them on top of the toast. Yum, yum, yum. And there's some delicious tea. And a chef here making some Indian food, which is huge in England. They are working hard at school, doing a little STEM project there. And some university students riding their bikes. Conkers. Let's see. British children have been playing conkers for centuries. Conkers are the seeds in the green prickly fruit of the horse chestnut tree. In autumn, the fruit falls from the trees and splits open, revealing the conkers. To play the game, players choose a good hard conker. Roald Dahl, the author of many classic children's books such as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach, wrote about conkers in his autobiography. A great conker is one that's been stored in a dry place for at least a year, he wrote. This matures it and makes it rock hard and therefore formidable. The device used in the game is made by hammering a nail through the center of a hard conker and putting a strong string, such as a shoelace, through the hole. The string's about 10 inches long and is knotted on one end to keep it from coming out of the hole. Conkers requires 2 players. One player lets her conker dangle, holding it still, while the other player tries to hit it with his conker. He can swing it or use the string like a slingshot. If he misses, he gets another turn. Actually, players can make up their own rules. The game ends when one player has broken the other's conker. I was about to say, is it just a game where they hit each other with it? Pretty much. Let's see, a protest here. To cut the cost of college tuition. A piece of the past. Thatched cottages date back to before the Middle Ages. Thatching is roofing made from bundles of dried reeds or straw. Over the generations, people stopped using thatching and instead used tile or slate roofs. But now some wealthy people are enjoying thatched roofs once again. They have replaced their contemporary roofs with thatching, so their house has a historic and rustic look. Shopping in Glastonbury. Let's see, men's dress. The suit that's now worn by men around the world was a British creation in the early 1800s. Before that, men wore fancy silk embroidered jackets over tights or knee breeches. Gradually, the style of clothes changed to matching pants and jackets. The shirt and tie combination is believed to have been introduced in the early 1800s by a dandy named Beau Brummel. The suits worn today were originally called lounge suits. Today, England is a fairly casual place. Most men wear jeans and t-shirts when not at work. Oh my, it's the Notting Hill Carnival. Very, very fun celebration of sort of Caribbean culture. And I think that's the end of the book. It most certainly is. So that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm still obsessed with Kate's wedding dress. It's so beautiful. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. Sorry again for all the shaking. My Tourette's, can you see the tremble in my hand? It's pretty bad tonight, but I'm gonna go lay down after this, so don't worry, I'll be fine. I hope that you have a very good